Hi, I'm Jenna.
And I'm Kelly, and this is the Rebuild the Construction Mindset podcast, where we focus on embracing new ideas and methods with enthusiasm and excitement in the construction industry.
Our goal is to bridge the gap between all professions that touch the industry and create a platform for different perspectives. From suppliers to end users, we want all voices to be heard.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this podcast today. We have got an interview with Amy Powell. She owns WellWorks, and it is a leadership training program for field leaders. So we'll start with a little intro with Amy. If you could give us a history of who you are and what led you to starting WellWorks.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me, right, my background is it's commercial project management. So I have lived, breathed, sweat, and bled this industry for almost 20 years now. I recognized the importance of these skills early on and went searching for training information on communication, leadership, emotional intelligence skills over a decade ago. I would find a few, but I kept finding that they were falling flat because they were typically derived from other industries. They were helpful, but never fully resonated with the challenges, the high pressure, the fast-paced nature, right, of what we do. So I got information from them, but I always felt like I was so thirsty for this information and I could only ever get access to it from like a crimped straw and get very little applicable information. So around 2013, I transitioned into a director of training and outreach role and built trainings. They were still focused around more of like the technical and management skills, not the leadership or people skills that I do today. But my field teams at the time also wanted and needed this information. So I searched extensively for this more effective type of people skills training that would resonate with how we work in the industry. I legitimately just was exhausted in trying to explain what it was or why we needed it, and got fed up with waiting and looking for it. So I decided to learn how to build it, or to become a trainer. Went back and got my master's in adult education and training and decided to build it. A high quality program that's accessible to our field, but also resonates with them and allows them to drink through a stainless steel straw, to get this information and move that crimped straw to get this essential information to just be the best version of themselves. So that's essentially what WellWorks is, right? It's built for our industry, optimized for our boots on the ground field and project leaders. It provides access and training on those essential people skills and focuses on the mental efficiency and productivity to elevate and bolster our physical efficiency and productivity. Those emotional intelligence, communication, leadership, critical thinking skills that are just so much harder to learn and gain access to within our industry. So very long story, but that is WellWorks, and that's my background.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a great introduction.
I was just thinking also, is there any other companies out there that focus heavily more in like the field training aspect? Because I think we've talked about this. There's not a lot of that in the first place. It's all in that office management side. So once you get to a superintendent, right? This is like, we want to get the guys down there who want to be foremen, who want to be improving, but they don't even know how, because where are you getting that in general? That's not something the guys in the field even know where to look for, right?
It is so dang difficult to get the access to them. And that's the interesting aspect of, you've got to be able to resonate with them and speak that language, and also know how their brains operate, right? Just like they're so hyper like intelligent and just full of energy. So to try to marry some of that training and that those skills and the language to that, it's really hard. It is not low-hanging fruit. The management was the low-hanging fruit. And actually, when I was the director of training and outreach, I'd have trainings every 2 weeks with our office folks, but I would get out to my field 2 times a year. And that's not without really trying. And that's not without them wanting the information. It's a lack of wanting it. They wanted it, but it's challenging. It's not an easy task. And so that's where I think I'm like, I knew it wouldn't be as easy, but I got sick of waiting and looking for it. I really did. Knew that they wanted it, they needed it. And so somebody's got to do it. All right, fine. I'm doing this.
Think of how many guys we potentially lost from the industry because it wasn't there for them to reach out and find. So, I mean, you had an opportunity to create something, but how many guys are we losing in the industry because there isn't that option to find it? You went searching. I don't know how many of our guys out in the field are out there searching like that.
I think more than we expect, but still, like, where do you find it? And is it not really optimized for the trainer who's training it to like, well, it's going to be in this classroom and this nice fluffy day and with this stuff and with the PowerPoint, you get to listen to me. You're welcome for the right. And it's like all these things of just like, wait a minute, what about them? Right? How much are they going to absorb instead of like really think about them and how they need to access it or would access it or optimize and get it versus it's all about me and the trainer and like how it's projected. So yeah.
What are some of the tools that you're using to get buy-in from the field? And do you see there being a difference between the younger generation in the field versus the older generation in the field and how that differs?
Those are two very hefty questions. So come back if I don't answer the generational one. In answering the first question of getting buy-in, it depends what we mean by buy-in, right? If it's just to convince them of the importance of it, it's not that difficult. Our field members are so dang smart. And I just mentioned that, right? They know the importance of it and they want it. I think a lot of the challenges in convincing our decision makers of this, that they do want it and to listen to them to say, yes, we want this. And helping them realize that the impacts and the effects, right, of so much of what we're trying to do in the industry. But if we're talking about buy-in to it in the form of like absorbing and using the content, that's a different challenge. The main struggle of this is years and years of misconceptions, misuse, and misunderstandings, all piled on top of each other and tangled up, just like that ball of Christmas lights and Christmas vacation, right? That's basically what we have right now. We're trying to untangle that. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy of, I am a construction worker. This is what it means to society. So I need to act and behave this way, which is unintentionally hurting us individually and as an industry as a whole, right? It's our mindset. Yep. My daily conversations include a lot of demystifying, clarifying, and untangling of what it means, what being a construction worker really is, and the pride that actually comes with that. And like, you could be proud to do that. And then the amount of how smart you have to be and the amount of stuff that you do and how amazing that is, right? It's also what leadership is and how it's different, but how it's still just as, if not more important than management. They are different. And what training is and what it's not, for goodness sake. But that this training is a reward. It's not a punishment. It's proactive. It's not the reactive that we've almost fallen into, this training rut of what training is. And this is an assumption. But the successes have really been massive. Although they're hard to capture in written form. The compliments, the feedback, and the motivation of the different participants that want to either help or continue the program after they complete it has been substantial. So it's not the buy-in once I get access to those field members who want it and I'm able to provide it. It's really more of like the general industry of just how do I still get it in front of them, or how do they know it's there,
right?
That it's accessible.
I think when you were just saying like how smart they are, I'm like, the guys, they have to know math. A lot of these guys are using math on a daily. I'm horrible at math, like fractions, all of that stuff. Like, they're using it on a daily, especially when you get to layout guys. I mean, they're doing a lot. And so just stopping and going, you guys are smart. Because that perception, that mindset of a construction worker is dumb. They're just a brute, right? They don't know anything because they didn't go to college. Like, that's so incorrect. Some of these guys out here are really smart, because we would not be able to build these buildings without that smart.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We almost just fall into that. We're like, well, I am dumb, or it's like, nah. No, that's trying to change that mindset of like, you're not. Just because you can't show the math doesn't mean that you don't do math and you can't do it. That's the thing of just like how we test it in society, or how we see that as intelligent or smart, is if you can show it and show it in the way that I want you to show it, versus like, how about we use it instead of just show it, right? and it's that application, but it's exactly that. They're social smart, and the importance of that, the math smart, the different languages, not just the Spanish and English, but I'm talking about all the different things that they have to be able to read. They say that people who can read music are so dang smart, right? Well, what about blueprints and story sticks and RFIs and specifications, for goodness sake? I mean, all these different codes, right? Like all of those different things that you have to be able to, those languages that you have to be able to speak and understand. How is that not smart and intelligent? Right?
And that's all coming from architects, managers with degrees. So it's coming from people that have that piece of paper. So they're actually having to figure out that information from someone that went to college. And it's nothing against going to college or not going to college, but to change that mindset that they are very smart and they can figure things out.
Massively.
Well, I think it's also kind of goes to think about like safety, right? Like over however many years it's taken for us to put safety first. I think it's probably gonna be the same thing with mental health. It's safety's always been, number one priority, and we've kind of drilled that into everyone's brains, which I do believe that is the case. But I think mental health is right next to it.
Yes.
And we're not putting as much of an emphasis on that.
Yes. And that's actually, yeah, very much agreed. Yes.
So going back to the generational question, what are your thoughts on that? And do you see there being more buy-in, I guess, from the older generation versus younger?
It's interesting because I think that there's still buy-in and there's still want, but I almost feel the feedback that I have gotten from younger individuals who have gone through the program versus very experienced, 20, 30 years experience, is I almost feel like they're exhausted with instruction. And so it's like, yes, the training is different, but I feel like they're like, well, I kind of already know this, but they haven't yet had enough experience to bleed it, to sweat it, to feel it, right? As much of like, well, that sucked. Well, that sucked too. Like you suck at a lot of things before you're like, now I need this information. And I actually just got this feedback from one of a more experienced individual who just went through the program of just like, I wanted it when I was earlier, but I was not ready for this information when I was younger. So this was and I think he's 24 years in the industry as a superintendent. And so he was like, this is when I needed it. I needed it now because I was able to have some of those failures and navigate and now see above a lot of the stuff and have more those tools. Now I'm ready for these tools instead of just storing them in your bag for however many years until you really need them. It's still he did say though, he's like, anybody who is ready and wants the information is going to get as much out of it as wanted. If it's mandated, no matter your age, no matter your experience, no matter your generation, if you don't want it or if you feel forced to have it, then you're not going to absorb as much. It's not going to be as valuable versus if you're like, you know what, I am ready for this. I do want to know this. I want to take it now. And then I want to take it again in 15 years, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it is slightly different, but it's just interesting in seeing those dynamics of just, if you're ready for it, do you want it? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty, right? For it? Because here's the straw.
Yeah.
More of that aspect, I think. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I'm thinking, my brain's like, I think I knew I wanted things when I was younger, but I wouldn't know how to go and use it tomorrow because I don't think I understood how to use it tomorrow. So I think there's like that for me. I'm just thinking maybe some people just don't even know what to do with it once they have it because like they want to get better. So they're doing what they can. But once you have the information, if you don't have support behind you, maybe you're not at a role high enough up that makes it usable, you lose it right away, right? So then maybe that ties into why it was better for him to have it after he's gone through so much than to wait until he was younger, when he was younger to have it, because would have been able to use any of those skills.
Right, Kelly. No, it's exactly that. And that's what I try. Even at the end of my program, I explain education and training information, just like food, right? If you're not hungry and you're just eating, what's going to happen to the food, right? Multiple ways that can be completely useless. But if your body's ready for it, if your brain is ready for it, and you can actually immediately use it, you're going to use that. It's bioavailable, I guess is the new term right now, right? In the health world, is it bioavailable? But it's also, you can look at it like a book, right? There's some books that you read at different parts of your life, and you're like, you get something completely different out of it. So you get a little bit of information here, you're like, wow, I needed this information here. But then you take it in a couple of years, and you're like, oh man, I missed this. Well, but you didn't miss it. Your brain has to forget stuff to learn it. That's a part of our brain's process. And so it just didn't need it in that moment for survival, for whatever it was. It didn't see the need for it as much. So it can't remember all of it. It can't retain every bit of the information. Forgetting is just as important as remembering when it comes to learning, so that it can remember the things that it needs within a certain duration, or that you realize you could have used right here in this recent past. So
yeah,
that's why I keep all the books like in my filing cabinet. I'm like, one day I'm going to relook at that and see if I can use it again. But you know what? It's remembering that book sitting in there is the other problem.
Somewhere where you see it all the time, right?
Yes.
So what is a mistake that us as an industry are making every day that you see? Just from, because you touch so many different companies and so many different lives with what you're doing now. So what do you see as something we can all kind of work on?
Yes, I've actually got two. So one is not recognizing or fully appreciating how critical our field leaders and crew members are, right? And providing the proper support or energy and focus to support them based on that realization. So that's one, and we covered that. But two is this has briefly been mentioned too, is not considering the importance or the value of the amount of mental energy it takes to do what we do, and investing in building, that endurance and giving it focus and attention it needs. So exactly, again, what we're talking about. And I know Kelly, you mentioned, right, our brains automatically drift to like the academically rich positions like management and executives, but I'm still talking about our critical field workers. If they're so critical, the amount of mental energy it takes to do what they do on a daily basis, and how hard they work, and how much actually goes into that work, not just physically, but mentally, right? We focus so much on that physical production, that productivity and efficiency, that we've lost sight of the control center of all of that, the human brain. And Jenna, what you were mentioning of like safety, well, yes, but have you considered the mental energy aspect of that, right? And everything that goes into it, of like, that's what's still working even after they've left work. That's what's still working, right? They're working. They're putting in the hours and not getting paid for it because they're thinking about it. They're waking up in the middle of the night because of a crooked masonry, elevator shaft, it's all these different things. And so that, I think that's one of the biggest things right there, is we don't just need bodies and physical labor with no brains. We need critical thinkers, problem solvers, those who are safety aware, to create this mindset and get rid of the mindset of I just need more bodies. It's like, no, we need to start recognizing and valuing how much mental energy and effort go into what we do on a daily basis, and try to focus on that.
Yeah.
Support that.
I think us as managers in the office, especially, and I can kind of speak to this in terms of like my own personal experience, but when you put quote unquote manpower on a schedule, you put a number of how many man days, or how many, obviously you keep saying men, but it's women and men in the field, but how many of them you need to get something done. You're not considering, the amount of extra effort it's going to take for them to get it done, right? Like, and I think that's something that us as an industry all need to work on, from the trades all the way up to the end users that are going to be using the building, and the expectations that they have, and these really aggressive schedules that we have built around this number of manpower, without thinking about how it's going to actually affect our fields. And yes, they're hourly and they're making overtime and things like that, but there's only so much money that you can throw at a human being before it is just too much. You know, some amount of money is not worth someone's mental health at the end of the day, or, you know, them coming home exhausted and they can't give 100% to their kids. And that's the kind of stuff that I think Kelly and I are so passionate about with starting this podcast, is these conversations we're having. And I think what you're doing is amazing in trying to help, you know, fix some of this.
Thank you. It's not an easy task.
No.
but I'm dedicated.
Takes a village. Takes a village.
Yeah, but it is. It's actually, even one of the advertisements that I had was increase the brain power of your manpower, right? Because that is the thing too. If you think of it from that numbers, you know, and the executives, when they're, I shouldn't just say executives, when we're talking about manpower, we need this much manpower. Well, is every manpower equal?
No.
Right? Right? Well, how are some so motivated and some like completely worthless? How are some amazing and they can create more energy from their teams, and some like they left early for lunch, or they, you know, whatever it is, or they left early for the day and didn't tell anybody, and it's right. So every manpower is different. Well, what makes them different, and how does that contribute into your productivity, if that's how you would like to measure it? It's you have to get down to focusing on the brain power and that mental capacity and how we're functioning mentally.
Well, in the want to do it, you know, making them feel appreciated to where they're going to work harder, and not do it because you want them to work harder. Do it because they deserve the appreciation. And I mean, there's very small things that you can do to shift, you know, their mindsets and have them not be so burnt out, kind of thing.
Yes. Massively. That's exactly what the program is, right? It's like, it's not a major shift of who you are. That's not it at all. It's very small tweaks and small things that you could do, just awareness of some of that, so that you could be more effective as a leader of how you say it, what you say, why you say it, and how that impacts productivity or whatever, but even just the well-being of your team or not.
So that being said, go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I was gonna say, as even from the manager side, when you're planning work and someone's coming in going, you need to work overtime, it's not put everybody on overtime, right? And I think that's like, all of a sudden you get told, hurry up, you need to hurry up and get done. And we need you to, everyone just needs to work. And I was on a project where we went, well, everyone doesn't really need to work. It's these certain crews that need to work. So why don't we do them for 2 weeks? Then we take them off. And if we give them like a week, and we'll see where it's at. And then if we're still behind, we look at what's the next critical area that we can be focusing on, because a lot of people just throw more manpower, hurry up and get it done. You're now taking that crew to just the ends of their physical and mental capacity over and over. So looking at it differently of what's best for the crew and the team, instead of what's best to hurry up and get it done. And I think it ties back to aggressive schedules, but we're not looking at the people that have to perform the work we're asking them to do.
Yes. We are not manufacturing. We are construction. And that's not saying manufacturing, that's how they treat their people. I'm just saying it's not a product and a conveyor belt. It's not. It's humans. We're a team sport in construction. And so we have to approach it that way. It's absolutely that.
Yep.
If you're just doing overtime, are they already at 90% and like they only have 10% left? Imagine what just a 4-hour half-day break or 1-day break and say, come back tomorrow.
Yep.
No, you're just getting that 10% and sucking that 10% out of them. Or are you getting like 60% out of every individual, you know, of because they're recharged. Then they have that mental capacity and that energy to do so.
Yeah, definitely. So that being said, kind of going back to the tools and things that the leadership can use, what are some things that you can kind of suggest, or some things from your program that people can implement tomorrow in the field?
Absolutely. So I have a great one, and it's simple, but hopefully extremely helpful. So I have an entire level in my program that's dedicated to leader maintenance, the main control center, the maintenance of that. So one of the things we are tasked with in construction, especially again in the field, is to make good decisions quick, right?
Yep.
All the time, like when doing it. But
911s, fires.
yes, the amount of decisions. I want the stats on that. I know it's hard to get stats on field in our industry, but in order to effectively implement these essential skills required within our industry, we need to engage a region of our brain called the prefrontal cortex, which holds our executive functions. Executive functions being those less tangible skills that people list on their job postings or resumes, like critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, self-control, emotional regulation, right? So you don't flip out on someone or over something seemingly small, right? So everyone agrees, right? We need those essential
That's job sites every day. What are we talking about?
So, but herein lies the challenge, because our brain uses 20% of our body's energy. Okay. This executive center, or the prefrontal cortex, is the most energy expensive part of our brain. So if we haven't properly fueled it, that whole rest that we just talked about too, or properly fueled our bodies, we've expended too much energy already that day. This construction essential part of our brain gets overridden and switched off and into like a conserves energy mode. So our executive functions, all those things, are completely inaccessible. And we are now in a freeze, fight, flight, fawn mode. And everyone could imagine what this looks like, right? Especially when someone comes up to us with an important question and we need to make an immediate good decision. Our decisions in that moment are likely going to be a bit more self-serving, short-term, defensive. And so how do we prevent this? I know it's simple. And one of my participants actually said this. He's like, I know some of this is simple, but it's like, drink water, stupid. It's like, yeah, that's basically, you're like accountability coach here right now. But like our vehicles and equipment, we need the proper fuel, nourishment, water, oxygen. And oxygen is just small exercise stuff. Taking a walk for 5 minutes is exercise. Okay. In this case, just getting oxygen to your brain, but also recharging. We just mentioned rest, which that's the hardest one, is like getting good sleep, any of us. And then updates, learning, just constantly learning. And if none of these are available, our energy is full on depleted, but we are still tasked with and responsible for making these important project or team decisions, right? So one other thing to know is decision fatigue. Literally making decisions depletes our energy, because that's up here in that prefrontal cortex. So you make better decisions at the beginning of a day, in the beginning of a week. That's when you have more energy. So try to schedule or plan ahead. But preventative maintenance is if simple awareness, right? If we're at the end of the day, we're exhausted, we still have to make that important decision. Can you buy yourself some time? And however much time, right? A fantastic quote that I give people is like, I will make a decision right now. Do you want a shitty one now, or do you want a better one later? And that later could be 15 minutes, right? It could be 30 minutes. It could be 2 days, whatever it is. You got to give a decision. But having that awareness that you were completely depleted, out of fuel, or you don't have enough fuel or water, or oxygen, all of that. Just saying, can you give me 30 minutes? And then try to just drink some water, just fuel up. There's emergency packs. Gosh, even look, Mountain Ops right there. I've got some right next to me of just like, well, crap, I didn't need enough, or I didn't have enough of this. So there's something to just jumpstart that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But anything you could plan ahead, even like healthy brain snacks or electrolytes and that kind of aspect. But the biggest thing is know that it's human nature. You get tired towards the end of the day. So those decisions do get a little more self-serving towards the end of the day and short term, maybe not necessarily long term, and towards the end of the week. So fuel it.
I would say this is why there's fights on what people are having for dinner between married couples, partners. I will tell you, that is one that I have. Like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. I'm done making decisions today. I do not care. And it's unfortunate, because that usually leads to the unhealthy, quick food that it's not fueling me in like making me feel better, making me feel strong. It's satisfying something, right? But it's making me just eat whatever I can get. And I think that's a common thing. Every day, most of us can hit that point and be like, I don't care. But it's the common fight at home, I would say, for a lot of people. What do you want for dinner? I don't know. I don't care.
That's where that impulse control goes away. They're like, I need quick energy, right? You're in that survival mode. So it's like donut, yes, please. You know, burrito from there, yes, please. Convenience, $6 milk, yes, please. What, you know, all of that. Legitimately, we get to that point. So yeah. Jenna.
Well, that's pretty much all everyone, not everyone, but I feel like majority of us, you know, when we're in the field, eat because it's quick and it's accessible. And that seems to be, you know, when we're rewarding our field, we bring them donuts or we bring them breakfast burritos. Like that's kind of our way of, which they love. But yeah, I agree. I think there needs to be some, you know, different options for fueling and giving them the proper time to rejuvenate, right? So like when they're on a break, let them take their break. Don't call them about something that can wait 5 minutes and things like that.
Well, because when you're eating that fast, you're not digesting it properly. And so, then you're not using that fuel efficiently within your brain that you need them to use later in the day, right? So yes, it is very much that as well. Again, it's seemingly simple stuff. It is still hard. You still skip lunch again, but plan for that of like when you do, like, well, crap. All right, let's see if I can, right? What can I do here? At least again, being self-aware of that because it's not going to be amazing every time. Yes, I still eat donuts.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They're good.
Right.
They're good. I just think right now, like most office settings, there's always snacks, right? For the office. Like I personally, which I feel bad about this now, like I feel bad that I never just like had a snack box like on my job site. Like for everybody. Not just like, oh my super and me, but like if any of my guys just need like a quick little fix. Like that's just that to me could be a thing. Like or a little like your fueling pack that you just held up. Just something they can add it to the water and they can move on. Like I just, as you're saying that, I'm like, damn it, why didn't I ever do that? That's a great idea. Because it's not just about me, it's my whole team is important, right? That would be over in their gang box. They just have like a snack pack of stuff.
Well, the expectation is that well, that's your problem. You need to take care of yourself, right? But the whole thing is actually, we are more motivated to fit in socially than we are we will forego food and water and basic survival stuff to fit in and belong to something. And so if we feel like the team needs us, we will forego that, right? Because it's a part of the team. There's some fun research on that, that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that like middle section is actually seeming to be more of like that essential bottom section of like,
wow.
So if it's not available, or if we see a leader that always never eats lunch and that's the expectation of us, then we will typically forego that. And that's that fawn, freeze, fight, flight, fawn. Fawn is just giving in and doing whatever everybody else is doing to fit in because it's a survival instinct in what we do. So being intentional about that, especially as a leader, and encouraging legitimate breaks, water, food, all of that. How is that not going to help your team with better decisions later in the day and later in the week?
Yeah, that's such a good point. I mean, it's so true. If you think about it, I mean, anywhere, right? Like if your leader or your manager is not taking a lunch, you feel guilty.
Oh yeah.
And I now that I'm a project manager, I make it very, very, very clear with anyone that I'm leading that a lunch is critical. Whether you just take a walk and walk around and just try to like take a break, you need that mental break. And I think it's so important. And yeah, it blows my mind when which is fine. If people want to choose to work through lunch, that's totally fine. But if they're doing it because they feel like they can't take a lunch, I mean, that's insane. And that needs to change.
It totally reminded me, it's the pit stop, right? Are you too proud to take a pit stop, right? In a race? That's the fuel. You're fueling up. Are you just going to be like, nah, I don't need these? Yeah.
Gas. Yep.
That is a great analogy. Oh my gosh. I felt like my brain just went, what? Like I did. I think my face was probably a little like, oh, like that is.
I don't know why. When Jenna was talking about it, I'm like, hey, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's like, is anybody out there not going to take the pit stop? And
So
and
true.
if anybody is everybody going to be like, oh, maybe I don't need one? Well, yeah, how is that going to turn out, right?
Right.
I
And
feel
if
like
everyone's,
oh, go ahead, Jenna.
I was gonna say, if everyone's following the leader, so like if everyone's following what the superintendent's doing for the general contractor, and they are running around constantly and never taking breaks, then it trickles down, right? Then the leaders, the superintendents and the leaders for the trades aren't going to do the same, and then their people aren't going to do the same.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the environment that you set. That's called setting the tone, right? That's that whole setting the tone that we all talk about. What is the leader doing? Because you do take behavioral cues and habits from the leader in that instance. And so if you're not showing it, I don't care what you say, if you're not doing it yourself, those behaviors are they're very contagious. Very contagious. It's not just a theory.
I remember when I first started in the industry, my boss always stayed late, and I was like, oh, I can't leave. I have to stay as long as he does. And I think that is I don't have that feeling anymore, but I had it initially. So I mean it had nothing, he had no problem with me leaving, but it had nothing to do with anything he told me, but it was the perception. If he's staying late, I'm going to stay late. So that's out in the field. What are we doing that makes our field workers think they can't do that? If that's happening. Yeah, I know for sure I have fallen into that trap.
Yes. Oh, yeah, all of us have, and we still will, believe it or not, we will, but just again, being aware of it, it's important. It's these small things, just small things.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other tips and tricks for our field leaders, or even just our leaders in the office, that can kind of help motivate and create these opportunities for our field to focus on mental health more?
I think the biggest thing is, it's important. We just talked about behaviors being contagious, and it's massive, especially coming from the leader. But you can't fake positive. You have to find it. You have to believe it yourself in order for them to believe it. The amount of the nonverbal, it's amazing how impactful and important the nonverbal is over the verbal. And I'm saying more than just words, right? So your tone, what you do, the action, everything else. Just again, instinctually, we've just evolved into being able to read, unconsciously sometimes read some of those cues. But if you're saying it, they might believe it for a little bit, and faking it might work it for a little bit, but it's not going to work for long. That's a very short term result. You got to find the positive yourself. You got to believe it yourself. That's what's going to impact everybody else, and the way that you show up and the way you do, not what you say. You got to walk the walk. That is massive in our industry. They pick it up, and they know, and they see sometimes before you do.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
that's great, because that is 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amy, so much for hopping on and talking through all of this. I mean, this is some really good information, and I know it's in a 30-minute span. So if you can just let everyone know where they can find your information, so they can kind of find more out about WellWorks, and hopefully start doing some of these trainings in their own companies.
Of course. Yeah, no, the only social media I am on is LinkedIn, the professional one. It's the only place you could find me on that stuff. But my website's www.livingwellworks.org, but the name of our organization is WellWorks, not Living WellWorks. I guess I'm frequently volunteering, guest speaking, and helping at Colorado State University's construction management.
Go Rams.
I'm a co-chair of the NoCo Construction Sector Partnership. Hopefully start seeing some articles from me in Colorado Construction and Design publication, but I'm always happy to connect and learn more about those in our industry, whether it's a good old-fashioned phone call, a meeting, or coffee. I'm all about coffee. Or a message through LinkedIn or a Zoom call. So any of that.
Well, that does it for our third episode. We hope you found this interview informative. Please share this episode with your field leaders, as well as anyone else in the industry you think would find this information interesting. You can follow R2CM on LinkedIn and Instagram and anywhere you find your podcast. And we really appreciate all the support we've received so far. So thank you, and have a great day.